In the spirit of the age, I felt like it was appropriate to start with something of a confessional. If I don't look quite the same way that I do in my picture, it might be because I recently had a nose job. In the spirit of full disclosure, it's my 5th in the last 18 months. I've also had some work done on my face. Now, undifferentiated squamous cells, parotid gland cancer, nerve sacrifice, and neck dissection don't exactly improve one's features. Nonetheless, there are 8 new notches in my already storied surgical belt. On October 26th, 2009, I woke up from a 34-day coma after undergoing a lung transplant. After that, I began to perform again. I was invited to debut at Lincoln Center, and I was doing some public speaking on the side. I'd write this talk called From Lung Transplant to Lincoln Center, and it was awesome. But in one way, lung transplants are like chocolates. One is rarely enough. And when I needed another double lung transplant, I decided I couldn't change the name of my talk from lung transplant to Lincoln Center to lung transplant. It just didn't have the same ring to it. Nevertheless, I persisted, and very gratefully, I received another transplant. 4 years later, it seemed that the odds were in my favor when I got skin cancer on my face, and my former pageant queen self just didn't know how to deal. But in the face of all of my challenges, I have been surrounded by a cast of doctors, friends, and family who have enthusiastically pushed me toward Encore after Encore, despite my body's seeming unwillingness to cooperate. And it's because of them that I am here today. And in a way, you are now all a part of this journey, this story, and this Encore. So if you'll join me, I'm going to take it back to where things started to get interesting. Growing up with 11 siblings, brains were the focus, but beauty was big and storied. My mother's cousins were infamous beauty queens who saved my grandmother and many other Jews like them through their charm and looks. My father's grandmother was a beauty queen. My mother was a beauty queen. I did my own turn, winning pageants and crowns and titles, and then woke up and realized I was a feminist and had hid all remnants of my reign. But something remained. I knew how to carry myself, how to show myself off to my best advantage and emphasize my assets. When I was diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension, there was a 2 to 5 year life expectancy. I had been studying in Europe, and I found out during a regular checkup. My parents were taken aback at how well I was taking the news and sat me down to make sure I was as well as I actually seemed. I told them that as long as I looked like myself, I could endure just about anything. Now, not looking sick wasn't always an advantage. I remember once parking in a disabled space, and it was the first time I had ever done it. I was chased down by a man in a motorized scooter who was convinced that I was not entitled to this benefit. Nonetheless, it was my voice that took me around the world, and my health didn't come center stage until my father and my grandfather died 2 months apart. 2 lung transplants later, I had an international career once again, a chart-topping Billboard classical album. I'd scaled the peaks of Patagonia and signed a hefty deal with a big publisher in New York. But after 600 pages of writing, my manuscript contained neither the breadth or depth of my experience. And I didn't know Why? I always had a porcelain complexion, but one day I woke up and I had freckles. When one of these freckles began to change, I went to my dermatologist, and in the 3.5 weeks it took to conduct the pathology from the biopsy and to schedule the surgery, this freckle grew to the size of a kumquat. It was the worst Christmas present I had received since that dress I got from my aunt when I was 13 that said, "This little piggy likes roast beef." True story. A few months later, and after thinking this was the worst thing to ever happen, I went to church with a friend. It was just after the new year. And I sat down in a pew when I was joined by a woman in black combat boots, black pants, belt, shirt, vest, and tie. Her sleeves were rolled up, revealing tats on both of her arms and crawling up her neck. Her head was shaved and she had bolts in both ears. Needless to say, this was not your typical congregant. I said hello, and she looked at me dead in the eyes. She said, "Has this been the worst few months of your entire life?" Taken aback by both the question itself and its prescience, I admitted that yes, this had been among the most challenging periods of my life, but it was a new year and things were going to get better. I had a feeling 2016 would be great. She said, "Don't count on it. I practice Kabbalah. This year is the final Jubilee, and things are going to get a lot worse before they get better." With that, the congregational hymn began to play, and I never saw her again. On Tuesday, I had a pain in my jaw. I thought it was TMJ, but my husband scheduled a doctor's appointment. By Thursday, it felt like there was a pinhead lodged in my jaw hinge. And by Friday, I had an initial diagnosis of parotid gland cancer. In 2 weeks, that pinhead-sized tumor grew to the size of my fist. Before the operation, I was sitting with the surgeon, who explained that if the tumor had invaded the nerve, they would have to cut it. And he would attach a tendon from the side of my temple to the side of my lips. So when I clenched my jaw together, it would turn toward a smile. Losing my lungs as a singer seemed the ultimate irony, but losing my face as a performer somehow seemed even more personal and insulting. I went into surgery hoping for the best result possible. When I awoke, I couldn't feel half of my face. I was frantic and I clenched my jaw together, desperately hoping nothing would happen. When I felt my face curl into a smile, I let out a cry the likes of which I had never made before. I felt like I was mourning my own death. I was devastated. I went home a few weeks later, and my sisters had covered all of my mirrors in butcher's paper, but it didn't seem to help. I felt lost in an endless feedback loop of sorrow. My face was permanently altered, and I felt like it would change many of the things that I loved most about my life. A couple of weeks later, my youngest sister came to me. She is a brilliant editor and writer, and she asked me what was happening with my book. Shocked back to the reality of my previous life, I realized that I hadn't thought of the hundreds of pages I had left to edit and cut for months. And making it all worse, my editor had recently left my publisher, leaving me to feel as creatively defaced as I was physically. She said, "Don't take this the wrong way, but you need a new editor like you need another hole in the head. She has the same morbid sense of humor that I do. And she offered to take on the task herself. I moved back to Cleveland to undergo chemotherapy and radiation and started this new collaboration. I would go to radiation and chemo in the morning, and then I would lose myself in the creative process. And as the cancer was burned away, so was the pretense in my manuscript. I lost half of my hair and eyebrows. My book lost half of its pages. And as my condition physically deteriorated, my manuscript finally came into focus, and the narrative became clear. I realized that my diva self couldn't continue externally while accessing what I needed to tell the story I was supposed to tell. In order to do that, I needed to benefit from the vulnerability that true collaboration and the greatest acts of creation build. In the end, the woman in black was right. Things got a lot worse. But in the process, I discovered that true beauty can't be bought with Botox or clothes, money, or nose jobs. It can't be marred by age, wrinkles, or cancer. When we reach out and we take the hand of help that has been offered without fear of judgment or rejection, we will know how to tell our own stories. We will find our true voice, and we will discover those things within ourselves and the world around us of true beauty. Do you guys want one more song? It's short, I promise.
Wow. So not only a world-class person and soul and spirit, your book, which is called Encore.
Oh, the Encore.
The Encore.
The Encore. Even though I've had so many. I should have called it the Encores plural.
And it's now like a bestseller and all that kind of good stuff.
It is, you guys are going to love it. Everybody loves it.
And
It's very lovely.
and one story that was, you hold this. I've got it. Recently,
Oh, you have two.
You had an amazing experience because I believe a week or two ago, you sung with someone really special. Maybe share that story.
Oh my gosh, you guys, it was amazing. Sorry, when I'm not on script, I talk like a Muppet. So my donor's daughter and I became friends. I got a message from her right before I did TEDx Mid-Atlantic a few years ago. And we communicated for a while and we've become close friends. I went to her wedding. She has an incredible voice. It's totally different from mine. She's not an opera singer at all, but an incredible voice. And so I wrote a song kind of about her mom because I sing with the lungs of an immigrant, which is really beautiful to me. And I think there are a lot of things happening in the world right now that make it more important to celebrate people who are different than we are. And so we sang a song together. You can find it online. It's beautiful. It's called American Rainbow. Look it up. American Rainbow.
So we'll share that. So one last piece. You talked about immigrants, and we're both families of immigrants.
Yes.
We have a Hungarian connection. I'll put a slide up for a second. I was on a flight about a month ago. I got bumped from a flight, I got stuck in a row, and sat next to this really interesting guy, and it turns out two Hungarians meet on a plane. I'm a quarter Hungarian. My mom's half Hungarian. She's here. Named Steve Geiger. And we got to talking. And a friend of your mother, Annette, who's here. You come from a very illustrious Hungarian line.
It's big. With so many people, you have to have a few that are successful.
And your grandfather, you mentioned briefly, former Senator Tom Lantos.
Yeah, he's a menschlich guy. He's not with us anymore.
Exactly.
Oh gosh, we could use him, but that's another story.
We could. So, well, Steve and I got to talking, and a little surprise. Steve has, as you may know, the Mensch Award. And Steve, come on out. Steve Geiger is going to be well, we'll let Steve take it away. The first Exponential Medicine.
Looks like the
Mensch
Hungarians
Award.
are here. Charity. You gave a very serious speech.
I know.
And it's very admirable, as you saw from the standing ovation. I think the whole world, if we're to see you, would be very proud of you.
Oh.
The Mensch Foundation, and I certainly am very proud of you. In 2005, we awarded your grandfather, Tom, the Mensch Award. And I'm so proud to give it to you now.
Thank you so much.
You read it.
It says, we thank you for being what you are. You exemplified the best of humanity. You haven't seen me on a bad day. That's all I can
And
say.
this is an understatement. And speaking of nose jobs, I can use a nose job. So.
I have a good guy.
But it's not over yet, because what you don't know, being a Hungarian and being a Jewish Hungarian, when I ordered this award, they said I can have two for the price of one. Can I have that second one, please?
All right. Menschets.
I'm glad you sat next to me. This is the Mensch Award to Daniel Kraft.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow.
But I feel like we should cheer.
It's wonderful that you're doing this program. It's wonderful that you're a doctor. All Jewish boys should be a doctor anyway. Actually, on CNN, before I came here, there was a breaking news that a tweet came through from Donald, said a bunch of Hungarian Jews are taking over San Diego. And I thought this was it. Anyway, thank you very much,
Thank you so
Charity.
much. Thank you so much.
Mwah.
And all right, thank you, Charity. And Charity will be out at the dinner, and she's got her book, and she'll be signing copies.
Do it.
And go from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And since your parents are here, Daniel, your boy is a mensch.
Thank you. All right.